What's up? It's Matt. We're back with another episode of MPTV. This time I got a friend of mine that flew in from cold, chilly Colorado to an ice storm in Cincinnati. Chris, what's going on, brother?
You know what? It's colder and chillier here than it is in Colorado. And when I was on the plane and I knew the Bengals were going to win, I knew hell was going to freeze over, and it happened.
So I guess for the studio audience, tell us who you are, what you're doing, a little bit about your background. Because I know you got that 105 on your FM dial, DJ.
107.9 KBPI South. I'm Chris Braden. I've been in media for quite a few years. I've worked at Iheart, Cumulus, Bonneville. I've run an ESPN station. I've been doing marketing for a long time, and that's how I met you, Matt, at Billie Jean's first event at University of San Diego. And I'll never forget that event because it was his first one, and Billy took Imperfect Action. And you know what? I had a blast at that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. So I'm down here. I just love what you're doing here. I've worked with a ton of restaurant owners and entrepreneurs, and the fact that you can reveal ROI to these entrepreneurs where we can't really do that in radio, it means a lot. And they're actually getting ROI. So I just wanted to come down, see what you're doing, all the videos and stuff. It's kind of right in my wheelhouse.
So let's talk about advertising. So you've got a background in radio, which 20, 25 years ago, I was in radio.
Yep.
I guess it was about 22, 23. And I believed in it. I didn't have any issue with it. But back then, there weren't a ton of options. You had radio, direct mail, TV.
All expensive.
Typically back then, TV was a lot more expensive. The newspapers, for some reason, thought they had Jesus' scrolling that people got. I still haven't figured out how that was so damn expensive back in the day. But
it was. As
we've evolved, people's radio and TV viewing habits have went to the phone. And it doesn't seem like a lot of the mass media has really followed that. So what have you seen? What are you seeing? And what do you see in the future for those platforms? You know,
you're 100% right. And believing in radio and believing in radio marketing are kind of two different things. And radio's gone into a different world of where they're trying to be what Matt Plapp is for restaurants right now. But there's so many third-party companies working with these radio stations, doing the pixel, everything. You got to have attribution.
Yep.
So, yeah, 100%. I think radio still works when you're having an event or you're pushing somebody to something.
Something specific.
Something 100% specific. You still have to target your market. You still have to pick the right station. You're still only, talking to half of them or even – that's great. You're probably usually only talking to, 20%. So, yes, 100%. I think the biggest thing for me is radio's trying to expand to be everything to everyone with the third parties. And you just can't do that. You just, if you're not a master of your own thing, you can't branch out and be good at other things. And I think you're 100% right. I don't know about you. When I listen to the radio, even if I do listen to a local radio show, I'm pulling up TuneIn Radio or I'm listening to Iheart Radio. I'm pulling the app up on my phone to listen to it. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, the days of flipping the dial in the car like I did when I was with my dad listening to Paul Harvey when we were kids, that's over.
Yeah. No, it's, for me, one of the things that I wonder about is a lot of businesses haven't adapted, and every medium works. I mean, you could run a radio ad, it's going to work. You run a TV ad, it's going to work. You run a Facebook ad, it's going to work. It's all relative to how well it's going to work
100%.
And how much waste there is. And I was talking to a restaurant the other day who is spending, right now, she's in a small market in Illinois, spending $750 a month in radio.
Right.
And she said, what do you think? What's your expert opinion? And I said, well, let's talk through your market. How big? Let's look at a map. Let's see how big it is. How big's that signal? Where they reaching? And she was a one-location restaurant. And, a lot of people still believe what they hear.
Right.
And there's a perception that certain things are bigger than it is. But I told her, I said, my honest opinion is you don't have a deep enough budget to be spending $750 there. Because honestly, let's say that $750 is supposedly reaching 10,000 people. of those 10,000 people, honestly, only 1,000. I'm looking at a map. I'm going to bet only 1,000 of them within 3 to 5 miles of where you're at, and nobody's driving 10 miles to see you.
No,
because they're passing 10 people just like you.
right.
And so I look at that, we're down to 1,000 people now, and of those 1,000 people, who's listening when your 10 commercial plays every other week? Maybe 100? You realize that what's available on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, you could reach 10,000 people within 3 or 4 minutes of your restaurant.
Right.
And so then she was another brand I talked to recently, and they've got 22 locations in a market.
Right.
That I'm like, yeah, you better be on radio.
Yeah.
You better be on TV. You better have billboards. You better have Facebook. You better have my company. It all complements, because I'll never forget this story. This is back a long time ago, probably, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Driving home Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I drive by Papa John's billboard.
Okay.
And it makes sense because it's like 2 blocks from the Papa John's. I got a great billboard placement. You're thinking, you see it, okay.
Yeah.
Call my wife, and I'm like, what do we want for dinner tonight? She's like, I don't know, you pick. I'm okay, whatever.
Okay.
I pull in I'm driving home after I see that radio commercial. 1530 Homer, Cincinnati Sports Station, Papa John's commercial. I'm like, oh, it's all Papa John's billboard. It's all Papa John's location. No shit, not even lying. Pull my driveway. I have an email from Papa John's. Now, granted, it's like one of the top 2 or 3 days every year people order pizza.
Right.
So it's a little cheap.
It was
there.
cooking the day before Thanksgiving.
But the billboard was always there. The store was always there. But the radio and email were very, very well timed.
Right.
But the fact that it wasn't that the billboard or the store location or the email or the radio got me to buy pizza for Papa John's that Wednesday night. It was the combination of all of it.
Sure.
And so I businesses all the time want me, they think I'm going to tell them not to do radio, not do TV, not do direct mail. I'm like, hey, it depends on your budget. Like, just like cars.
Oh, yeah.
Can you afford a Lamborghini, or can you afford a Chevy Suburban, or can you afford a Ford Taurus, or can you afford a moped? It's down to what you have to spend to allow you to get where you want to go, and if you have enough luxury to get there in a stupid fashion.
Right. I think the cool thing that you just said there, as far as radio, or with what you're doing here, it's all about touches. Mm-hmm. I can tell you this. I've seen ads on a morning show in Denver go for more than $750.
Yeah,
one 30-second ad.
Yeah.
So it's all about touches. So, like, in that situation, I would go to her, like, if I was in the studio and I know she's running ads, I'd be like, you should put all your ads on the weekend. You can get like 30 of them for that same price and just kill the weekend. I mean, there's ways you can do it, but yeah, the price. And here's the other thing about radio that just drives me bonkers. And you see it in print and stuff like that. Like, how many calls to action do we need? Do we need your phone number? Do we need your website and your address?
And a disclaimer.
Yeah, and I'm sitting in my car.
Yeah.
So basically what am I going to do? Hopefully I maybe remember the website. Yep. But if I decide to go there, I'm just Googling it.
Well, it's funny you say that, because yesterday morning in Cincinnati, there's a thing called, I'm sure they probably do, you're at Adlets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back when I left radio, I was in radio from 99 to 03.
Okay.
And in 99, I also bought a book on Adobe PageMill, how to build websites, and we built our boat dealership.
Right.
03, I left radio, went full-time with the business.
Sure.
And I'll never forget it, because I don't know what it's called now, Hubbard, I think is what it's called now, Hubbard Interactive or something. But they were Infinity Viacom back then, which is where I worked at in radio.
Hubbard sounds right.
Okay, Mike Frederick calls me, and him and I were talking. He's like, hey, by the way, we got something right down your alley. Okay. So what? He's like, we got these commercials called Adlets, where it's literally like 5 seconds.
Top of the hour.
And I said, man, you know what? I love them. He goes, I know you would, because he knew my mindset.
Right.
Because we bought a bunch of them. They were cheap as could be.
Yep.
And I bought a lot of them on the weekend, which you mentioned a minute ago, because I knew that there was less demand for inventory from Coca-Cola and Papa John's. And I loved it because it was boats, campers, ATVs, Plaps.com. All we said.
Right.
Because, that's all I need to say. Well, yesterday morning on the way to the office, one of our former clients, Jeff Weiler Automotive, he's got 40 or 50 car dealerships somewhere in the neighborhood. He's like, 2,500 cars online, Weiler.com. That's all it was.
Dude, that's money. I've made a roofer $1 million because this is the ad. Need a new roof? Call Peak View Roofing. Go to peakviewroofing.com today. Mm-hmm. That was it. The whole ad. He had 2 stations. It ran on the top of the hour, every hour.
Yep.
No one's getting sick of listening to it. By the time you get a chance to go flash, change the station, it's done.
Well, and it's
a brilliant campaign.
That's why I love too. And you mentioned this a minute ago, which I think is pretty funny that you said about the weekends, was the way I got into the restaurant business now started back in '99 when I got in the radio advertising. Everybody's got an account list, and you can't call on certain places. Like Weiler was taken, all these places were taken back then. And I started to look to see who nobody was calling on, and nobody was calling on the mom and pop independent restaurants, which made sense because
and too much work usually.
Yeah, because there was a lot of work.
Yep.
And like Ferrari's Little Italy, Tony Bassano, his mom and dad, they weren't on the radio, but they had an awesome restaurant. And I looked at it and said, here's a couple opportunities. Number one, you're right. I look back at it now, there wasn't much options, but 90% of the commercial was going to be wasted.
Sure.
So I told him that, hey, 90% of who hear this, it's a waste. Let's focus on the 10% and let's figure out a unique way to use it. I said, here's something I need. I know I'm going to be entertaining people. It's good for your restaurant if I bring in business owners from the community because those business owners will come back with their wives and their kids. I said, so here's what I want to do. I want to trade 50-50. We're going to do $800 a month in advertising, which isn't much in Cincinnati, by the way. We're going to do $400 cash, $400 trade. So that means you have $400 in gift cards. Half of them will probably never get redeemed, which is the facts.
Radio people love trade.
Yeah. The other half, they'll get redeemed when I bring people in who are new customers, because that's what I'm going to focus and help you on, because you're my client. The other $400 is cash. What we're going to do is take the $800, and we're going to buy. We bought Friday evenings and Saturday evenings, 6 to 8 p.m. Because our station, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. was PM Drive.
Right.
6 p.m. to 10 o'clock was evening.
Yeah, the cheap spots.
Yeah.
Even though it's still in the vicinity.
Exactly, same area. So I knew how to beat our system, and I would get Ferrari's spots between 6 to 7 o'clock on Friday nights.
Right.
And so I would take this $800, put it over 4 weeks, $200, and I would buy 15-second commercials, and I would put 4 of them Friday night, 4 of them Saturday, whatever the numbers were. And it worked. They had so many people tell them, but the reason it worked was it was efficient.
Right.
Because we didn't need a whole lot. And at the same time, Matt Plapp's I used to go to Ferrari's, Mama Bassano's lasagna. It's still at Madeira. It's unbelievable. But it's called Mama Bassano's lasagna. It was fire.
Right.
Unbelievable. Like you would eat it and you would be in a bad place for like an hour. Like it was tough to go back to work.
Right.
But I would take somebody in every week. And every week that person would go, holy shit, this place is unbelievable. I never knew this place existed.
Right.
I'm coming back with my wife this weekend. And so now here's Matt Plapp going 52 times a year, introducing 52 people, of which 20 to 30 become good frequent customers. I also picked locations that were near the business I was taking. I'm not going to go to the east side of Cincinnati and drive 40 minutes to the west side with a client. I looked at my clients and said, hey, Ken, your office is in Kenwood. Yeah. Have you ever been to Ferrari's? Because a lot of people don't live where they work. So Ken lived in Mason. He never went to Ferrari's because it was a little below Kenwood. I'm like, hey, meet me at Ferrari's, noon, Friday, my treat. We'll talk about something cool. Go in there. He's like, dude, it's a block from my office.
Right.
And so it had all these things. So to me, there's little hacks, even today, on how businesses can buy media better. But that all kind of got me going because you said that the weekend. But I also love what you said about the call to action. It's like everybody's literally like, hey, come down to our place and buy a car and check us out at fyzu.com. And, here's our phone number and here's our address. And then they got the disclaimers like,
yep, exactly, 100%. And the other thing with the radio ads right now is nobody needs a 60-second ad. Like no,
do they still sell 60-second commercials?
They do sell 60-second ads. And you know what? Most businesses have a hard time filling 30 seconds. And when they send me their copy and I'll say like, all right, I'm going to read this 30-second ad for you. There's like 200 words on it.
Now, you know a way to use a 60-second commercial?
How?
Give you a little hack. And I did this back then, and I guarantee you can still do it today.
Put a million ads in one?
No, I would sell them together.
Okay.
I would, because I was the king of finding the little guy.
Right.
Because everybody was taken. And my first 18 months of radio, I actually ended up making more than anybody.
Right.
But it was all off, like some people would have $100,000 bill in a month. Like that was a big thing, the Century Club.
Right.
If you got to 100, that was solid. Well, most people were like 60 to 80. And they would have a Weiler spending $8,000 and
an agency here.
One agency doing $10,000 and Coca-Cola doing this. I got up there with $500 to $1,000 increments. And what I did, like I'll never forget, Bushman Supply, Margie in Cincinnati, Ohio, they wanted to be on the radio station. They liked oldies. It was a good place for them. They actually could sell citywide. but it was expensive, and they didn't need 60 seconds. And the way our inventory was our 15s were a premium because they were bookends.
Right.
They were traffic and weather. They were this. So I looked at the 60 and said, I'm going to pick some day parts, and I'm going to go sell these 4 companies together the exact package. Let them all know, hey, Margie, you're this. I call it the Home Improvement Minute.
Oh, that's cool.
You're the landscape company. This guy does pools. This company does landscape supplies, which was what Bushman was, and Ray St. Clair Roofing's a roofing company. You each get 15 seconds. It's just going to sound like 4 15-second commercials. And then what I actually did, to be honest with you, too, is I made them a little less because I started at front and beginning. I said, this is the Home Improvement Minute brought to you by, and then it went to the 4, and then it went to their like 10 to 12-second commercial, and then it ended. And so
you
it
co-opt the radio ads.
Yeah. And so,
That's
I
cool.
did that because I saw that these businesses, for me, that was my only chance to go on the radio. I had to sell somebody something.
Right.
But I also looked at how could I bring value because I knew that Margie and them couldn't drop $4,000 a month on 60s. We only had 60s back then, 60s and 15s.
Right.
This is back in like 99, like when radio was, just
60-second ad. Can you imagine just like sitting?
Oh my
through one
gosh,
right
it was
now?
brutal. And so that was what we did was we got creative. And I don't know if you can do that today, but that was something that helped a lot. And I never forget because I come back to the station, Kim Weiss is like, what do you mean you sold the I think it was like the Home Improvement Minute.
Yeah.
Like, well, I sold each one of them a schedule for $2,000 a month, $500 a week.
Right.
I've got a $8,000 package. I took some 60s in these certain times, and I added some because we had weather sponsorships and traffic sponsorships with
Sure.
name mentions. I packaged up. They all bought the exact thing, and it sandwiches together. And she's like, "Wow."
Was that the first Matt Plapp creation?
So that was one of them.
Oh, that's a pretty good one.
One of the funniest Matt Plapp creations.
By necessity, too.
Since we're telling stories, one of the funniest one was the official taffy of Oldies Fest. So we had this event called Oldies Fest that was held for a long time at New Richmond Fairgrounds. It was moved to Butler County Fairgrounds a couple years into my radio career. It was a 60,000 person Oldies concert. They'd bring in Little Richard, the Beach Boys. It was a badass event.
My mom would have been there.
Oh, my mom didn't love it. I used to get them backstage. So we have this event, and I'm looking. And the first year I went to it, I noticed that it just wasn't a lot. Like if you're sitting there for 10 hours listening, there's nothing around. And so people were always selling these on-air sponsorships for stupid money. I said, Kim, I want to sell the on-site. I want to sell the official car dealership. I want to sell I had the official glow necklace. A guy named Tom Hager or Hagen. He sold glow necklaces at the Cincinnati Reds games.
Cool.
I found him down there and sold him a space that did because he sold it. But
those are pretty pricey usually too.
Yeah, and and the funny part was I ran across. There used to be they're still around. I think they're owned by somebody else, a conglomerate. But in Cincinnati, there was a family-owned called Dosher's Candies that made the French Chew.
Okay.
And they're unbelievable. They'll rip your jaw apart if you don't get them at the right temperature. But they had the French Chew. And so somehow I ran across Harry Dosher Jr., who I think he graduated law school or something, or he was in law school, and took the family business over. And got to talking to him, and they didn't do a whole lot, but we were talking about stuff, and I told him about Oldies Fest, and his dad loved Oldies. So we got him involved. I said, you know what? I'm going to make you the official taffy of Oldies Fest. And he's like, you serious? How much? And I got the package together, and he's like, holy crap. And I come back, and I'm like, Kim, the official taffy of Oldies Fest, French Chew. She's like, you have an official taffy? Like, who else is there? I'm like, nobody.
Right.
But
you have it today.
Yeah, but it sounded great.
It does sound
his exact
great.
audience. And here's the funny part was I had also sold them a taffy eating contest where they had a booth because that was the one thing too. I made these packages.
Right.
We had all this inventory. We never sold on site. And I also knew that our concession company, it was called Cold Iron, had certain rights to food, but they didn't have candy. And I'm like, dude, there's going to be 60,000 people there.
Right.
Your package is going to cost $4,000. You sell a product for $5. All you got to do is sell this many taffies, and you're going to make money. And your dad loves Oldies. He gets to be there. So he ended up doing really, really well from the advertising, from the sponsorship, but also selling taffy. But I had come up with the taffy eating contest.
No one choked to death?
Well, it didn't happen because of that. So I put it all together. We're like a week out in corporate here. And corporate attorney calls me. Goes, tell me what you're doing, Matt. What do you mean? He's like, this taffy eating contest. I explained. He's like, do you want people to die?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, yeah, that would be kind of tough to eat a taffy really fast. He's like, that's not happening, bro. So we made the taffy stretching contest. So we had yardsticks.
Yeah.
And you had to see who could stretch it the most.
That's a great idea.
But it just got people playing with the product. But yeah, it was fun. The attorney literally couldn't believe I came up with that idea. What's the craziest thing you've seen a small business do in some of this your radio days?
There's a lot of them. I mean, I can't really think of any. I know a lot of poor implementation.
Well, let's talk about poor. Give me a poor implementation because the businesses can learn. Because that implementation could probably be poor on Facebook and Instagram too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard you say today when I was listening to your calls today. Okay, we're gonna spend. Let's just say it's a midday ad and it's $75.
Yep.
I'm gonna give out my phone number.
Yep.
But nobody answers when I call.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
did I tell you what Grant Cardone did at his event a couple weeks ago?
So
I'm at Grant Cardone's event down in Miami, Florida, and he's adamant, first call, first ring, that your employee should answer that phone on the first ring. First ring.
Ooh.
That's his mandatory rule.
There's no leeway there.
And it shouldn't be, hey, how you doing, what I'm calling. It should be a call to action.
Sure.
It should be Cardone Capital, are you calling to invest in our new 10X property in Miami, Florida?
Right.
Because the person's calling Cardone Capital. That's what they do. And then you need to be able to just go through the process seamlessly, get customer data, and then sell something on the phone. That's the concept.
I can see Grant saying, "Get my money."
Yeah, who's got my money?
Exactly.
But he gets this guy from the crowd. And he's like, "Okay, whose business is open?" It was like on a Friday. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday event. This was a Friday afternoon. Who's got a retail business that's open right now? This guy's like, "Me." Somebody go get his phone number. Get the phone number for your business. So he gets his phone out, gets this guy's phone number, calls it. Rings once, rings twice. He's like, "Uh-oh." Rings 3 times.
Oh, no.
Rings 4. It keeps ringing. He's like, "Dude, how does it keep ringing? Is there not an answer machine? Like, what the hell? You're sure you're open?" And he's like, "What's even scarier is that you're on your cell phone calling your office to say who the hell's not answering the phone." But your sidebar that was something Grant brought up, was the fact that how businesses are inherently bad at certain execution like that.
Some of the basics even. Yeah. I think the other ones I see all the time is, I heard it in your calls, you talked to them about a mobile-friendly website. I can't believe. Gosh. And then you said, don't have your menu on the PDF. Like, you know, there's so many things that I've seen. Here's the one that just drives me crazy. And let's say this is a restaurant. Hey, I want you to go to Jason's Deli Grand Junction.com / Fort Collins.
Yeah.
You're like, what
the hell?
What?
Yeah.
I'm not that bright, but I know that I'm definitely not going to remember what that is. So I'm just going to Google you, and I wonder if it's even going to come up because I forgot everything by now. So
yeah, I went to a restaurant the other day, and their website was something that had it didn't make sense to me. And the guy's like, our website, nothing we could find was available with our name, and this one was funny and short. It was like 6 letters. It was something weird. But he's like, this was for us, our way, because there's already so many Joe's Pizzas Napoli or whatever. It was something like that. He's like, we couldn't find a combination that wasn't stupid, long, with hyphens, and we didn't want to go .biz or .this.
Right.
So we found a funny.com.
Sure.
And it was, I can't remember what was that? It was like something like boogers.com or something. And I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, that's the only.
It doesn't matter what it means if it sticks in my brain. I think the last thing that really kind of is frustrating to me. So I've done a lot of athlete interviews and things like that, and we've been on location for events with athletes and stuff. So, like, there's these car dealerships that pay, I don't know exactly how much they pay these athletes to come in for an hour to sign autographs. And I can't tell you how many times I've been hosting one of these events where there's hundreds of people out the door waiting for this autograph and picture with this athlete that there's no call, that no salesman's talking to anybody. They're not handing out any information. They're not like, hey man, this line's like an hour long, man. Here's something to drink. You want to go test drive this? Here's my information. We're having a contest here. Hey, Garrett Bowles has signed this helmet over here. You sign up for this, you get to win the Garrett Bowles the helmet. I'm like, I've sat there and that's the one that always comes to mind because there was like 1,000 people in line for Garrett Bowles.
Who the hell's Garrett Bowles, by the way?
He's a left tackle for the Broncos. He was a first-round draft pick.
People are in line for a tackle?
Yes. The Broncos are nuts, dude. I know you guys.
They're for sale right now.
They are.
You want to put our money together, like how we did that?
Down with that.
How we did that 60-second commercial. I was joking about that the other day, not the sidebar, but I saw they said that in order to buy a team like that, there has to be a majority owner at like 50% or 40%.
Sure.
And they had put the number, it was like $1.4 billion is what that person had to have. And I'm like, damn it. I can't cop.
Broncos are going to sell for
$4 or something.
$4 billion is the start.
Yeah,
it's freaking insane. And I think Pat Bowlen bought it for. I'm getting my numbers mixed up.
Was it 300?
It was like $250 or $350,000.
$350 million.
Yeah, million.
Yeah.
And so as far as the Garrett Bowles is there, so like he's a nice guy, but it's not like Terrell Davis or like Von Miller's
Terrell
there.
Davis was a beast.
You know what I'm saying?
On
Like,
Xbox Live or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I see him all the time at Colorado Golf Club. But so he's there, and they're not taking advantage of all these people. And I'm thinking about it, like this is your one shot. So you spent, let's say, $10,000 to get people there to the event. Then you paid Garrett. Now you have all these people on property.
Nobody's doing a damn thing.
I was sitting there watching, and I walked over to the manager, and I'm like, how are you getting, what are you doing here? I'm just curious, like as a business guy.
Well, the problem is a lot of these car dealers have FU money. That if you own a car dealership today, for the most part, in a big city.
It was a big Nissan dealer,
Yeah.
but this was the GM, and like, I don't know.
It's an
Every
ego
sales
thing.
position I've had where I'm a director of sales, I'm like really incentivized to sell.
Yep, I know.
The more money I make, the
But,
more money
yeah.
you make, we're all happy. So yeah, it's just stuff like that, just like calls to action. I think that the thing that dovetailed with that, listening to you, was people following through in the restaurants with talking to them, get them in the program, even just having them scan the QR code, table tents.
Yep.
You know, that's all just planning, follow through, execution. It's not hard. It's attention to detail. And I think that is basically the problem with all marketing.
I couldn't agree more. I'll give you a story on the car one you'll get a kick out of. So this guy, John Walker, I don't know where he's at these days, but John owned the Mercedes dealership back in the 80s, I think maybe early 90s in Cincinnati. Blew it up to real big and sold it, made a bunch of money.
Right.
And
Good for him.
John was telling me this story. He made all his money because they did free car washes on Saturday. So that was his big thing. Come get your free car wash. Because he's like, if I know one thing about Mercedes owners is that, yes, they have money to buy a car, but they're cheap asses.
Yeah.
And so they will love a free car wash. And so he said he's out there one day and he's watching, and these guys are waiting because it got so popular, like 2 hours
To get a car wash.
to get a car wash.
No way.
And so he looked at it and said, I got an idea. And he'd walk up to people and say, hey, your car's going to be done in a couple hours. Go ahead and take one of our loaner cars and go ahead and just go out and come back a couple hours. We'll have it done. And he's like, Matt, I was told I was crazy for this early on.
Right.
And he said, what I did, though, is we model they had,
Sure.
and then the loaner was the next model.
The new one.
Yeah. And he's like, every Saturday, a couple hundred cars come in, 20 or 30 loaners would come out. 5 or 10 of them had new homes that afternoon, like clockwork. He's like, the dude came in
Right.
for a free $10 car wash,
Exactly.
was going to wait 2 hours, so I gave him a loaner car, and 2 hours later, they're buying a new Mercedes for $80K.
And you drive a Lambo, so like I've been like, and I'll go get a rental car, not the one I have today. I wouldn't want that one. But I've driven cars where I'm like, oh, I kind of want this.
Oh, I Volvo, man. I can't
Yeah.
wait to get a Volvo, honestly. I've had 3 Volvo rentals
Really?
in the last year. I've never had a car so solid in my life.
Really?
Oh my gosh, dude. They feel so safe,
Right.
so comfortable. Like doors close differently. They sound. I've never had a car. I've driven a lot of nice cars,
Right.
and like the Lambo isn't really honestly a nice car. It beats the crack. You do that after leg day.
Yeah.
I had one day I had to roll out of it into my garage. Like I couldn't walk.
You
So-
couldn't drive that today either.
No, you couldn't drive it in this weather. There is a blog, Daily Driven Exotics. They're out of Vancouver, Canada, and they drive their Ferraris and Lambos in the winter in Vancouver. It's crazy. I don't know how, but they
Good
do.
for them.
But, okay, break time. Restaurant owners, you're watching MPTV, so you're obviously interested in increasing your sales and profits. But what if I told you you could eliminate the hope and pray out of your marketing? You could spend money and actually see results. You know, most marketing starts with attention, like a billboard. The problem is that attention leads nowhere. That's why we created the ROI Engine Restaurant Program. We take attention and gain huge engagement, whether it's in-store or online. We help you build a database with deep customer information that's comprised of email, cell phone, and birthday. And then we drive them into the restaurant with trackable results. Yes, results you can actually see. If you're interested and want to have a conversation, check out restaurantmarketingthatworks.com. Worst case scenario, you get a lot of great ideas. Now back to the show. That Volvo is the next car for me.
That's cool,
one
man.
of the next. I mean, their SUVs are great, but they're sedans. Like, I've never been in a car and felt like, man, something could actually hit me, and
Right.
you're ready. But then it's comfortable, the speed, the handling, the everything. It's one of the better thought out cars I've ever been. I don't know who makes it. Is it Swedish maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Is it German or Swedish? Or?
I think it's probably
It's
Swedish.
European.
I don't know.
And I drive a 4Runner. It was funny when I came to see you out in Vegas in January. We were going through. You were doing the goals with your team.
Yep.
So I joined in and was doing my goals, and a lot of people were talking about cars, and I was like, I love my car.
I want a new one.
Down the road, yes, but like, when you buy a new car, you're like, where's my change go? Where do I put my stuff? Like, switching a new car for me, it's a lot of extra.
I had, what car was it? I think it was a BMW, like 5. I think I've had 40 something cars. We counted up some stupid number.
I'm kind of like that until I got this.
Yeah, and I had like 2 or 3 cars ago as a BMW, and I never forget. It was like there's always the argument like in the house, like where the hell are my pins? Like every day I come home, I put my stuff here, the pins go.
Right.
Like, my wife's like, I don't steal your pins, moron. And I never forget. I went to go clean this car out when I sold it. I had like 8, like in this glove box, like or the center console, it just kept going.
Yeah.
I had like 80 pins, and I'm like,
there's my
pins.
Restaurant owners, did you know Matt has free online marketing courses that teach you how to successfully market your restaurant? Email support@mattplapp.com to get access to the courses and a free social media content calendar.
Cool, brother. I
That's
appreciate
cool.
you being on the
Yeah.
podcast today.
No, it's fun, man, and I appreciate it. And just like I said, just coming out here and observing and stuff, what you guys are doing, like the value you guys are giving these customers and the clients on just not even talking about the marketing side, just the media
Yeah,
that you guys are doing and the value you're giving your customers is really cool.
I appreciate that.
I think you guys are doing a great job.
I appreciate that. We're on a mission. One of my goals, 2 of my goals, help 1,000 independent restaurants make another 6 figures a year net profit, because there's a majority of independent restaurants are like on that line. They're
Right.
like, I'm making a paycheck, I'm paying all my employees, but man, I just need another 100K or 200K in sales.
Right.
That now nets down to a big chunk because my overhead's covered. And then the other aspect is I want, with America's Best Restaurants, with our TV show, I want to feature in the next 5 to 7 years every independent restaurant that's awesome. I want to help those restaurants tell their story and get the attention and notoriety they deserve.
Right. And that's cool because you and I both know the blood, sweat, tears, and work that these people put into these restaurants. And it's not easy. Plus, if they make more money, like all boats rise.
Yep, all tides rise, baby.
Yep, there you go. So, yeah, thanks very much.
Well, cool. I appreciate being on MPTV. That's it for this episode. If there's 2 things you take away from this, outside of some of the funny stories, it's number 1, if you're going to market, make sure you have a clear call to action. For God's sakes, don't be on radio giving them your address, your social, your email, your phone number, your birthday. Ask for the business and then give them an easy, clear way to get a hold of you. And then last but not least, take advantage of opportunity. Where do you have a line that you could be talking to people, whether it's a car dealership like you mentioned with the lineman, whether it's a Facebook post that's got 100 comments, whether it's your 50 Yelp reviews that were great that you never responded to. Where is there a line of people waiting to have a conversation with you? We'll see you next episode.